Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about the reading question types in academic English tests such as TOEFL IBT and how to address these questions. Before we start, for each question, I will assume that we have already read the first sentence and the last sentence of every paragraph and any necessary sentences in between, and we are ready to start answering the question. So before I explain the answer to a specific question, please feel free to stop the video, read any part of the paragraph that might be related to it, and answer the question. Now that we have made that clear, we can start with the first question. The first question is a vocabulary question. Typically, there is at least one vocabulary question in a reading passage, but in some of them, there can be two. There are two scenarios in these types of questions. In scenario number one, there is a possibility that you already know the meaning of the bold word in the paragraph. Well, in this situation, you may answer the question without even looking at the sentence it is located in. But due to the context, this might be a bit risky. So I personally advise you to always read at least the sentence that the word is located in. In scenario number two, you may not know the meaning of the word. In such a situation, there is no need to worry. Just read the sentence the word is located in, and most of the time, you will be able to infer the meaning of the word. In this specific question, the answer will be option A. The reason is that when you take a look at the sentence, it mentions resources such as fresh water and predictable weather. We know that these things are becoming less and less common every passing day. That's why saying that these resources or conditions are getting limited makes a lot of sense. The second question is a negative fact question. We need to be very careful about these questions because they can be quite tricky. The question will give you three options of correct information, and it wants you to find the incorrect one. When you take a look at this question, you will see that options A, C, and D are correct information. Sentences 4 and 5 provide information about all these options, but option B is incorrect because the paragraph does not simply state that there is no need for technology. On the contrary, we can infer from this paragraph that many futures actually require technology. That's why option B is the incorrect information, so the correct option of this question. The third question is a rhetorical purpose question. The most important thing to remember here is that we are not looking for something that is already there. Instead, we are trying to infer the purpose of the author for something specific. So, for this question type, be ready to make inferences. For example, this specific question asks why the author mentions the terms hydroponic and aeroponic. This is located in sentence number 2. Well, this sentence involves the definitions of these terms. When we read this sentence, we understand that these are different ways of doing vertical farming. That's why the answer should be A. There is no information about vertical farming replacing traditional farming as in option B, or traditional farming being outdated as in option C. When it comes to the last option, D, we can safely say that this paragraph does not focus on any disadvantages, rather it focuses on advantages. Question number 4 is a reference question. In these questions, the answer typically comes from the same sentence that the reference is located in or the one before that. We can safely say that this is a relatively easier question type compared to most others. When we take a look at this, we can see that they refers to vertical farms. So the answer should be option C. Let's continue with question number 5. The fifth question is a fact question. Fact questions are typically easier than negative fact questions because you only need to focus on the correct information, but still we have to be careful about them because we cannot always guess where from the paragraph the specific information will come from. So, when we read the second sentence and the third sentence in this paragraph, we understand that vertical farming relies heavily on electricity for climate control and artificial lighting. That's why vertical farming is more expensive than traditional farming. So the best option that gives this information is option B. The other options are incorrect based on the paragraph. Question number 6 is a sentence simplification question. Well, we can also call this a closest meaning question. In these questions, we should focus on avoiding any information that is not included in the sentence, and we should focus on summarizing the sentence as, briefly as possible without leaving out vital information. Well, when we read the sentence in bold, we understand that vertical farms are better for growing high-value crops rather than growing staple foods, which require large quantities of production. As a result, we can say that the best option that matches this information is option A. The other options are either incorrect or they leave out essential information, or both of them at the same time. Well, let's continue with question number 7. This is a vocabulary question. Just like the previous question, there are two alternatives here. The first scenario is that we already know the meaning of complement, which means to supplement or enhance something. If that's the case, the answer is already clear. If not, you need to focus on the context. Right after complement, the paragraph says, rather than replace. Well, this means complement should be the opposite of replace. The closest word to replace here, and probably the most important distractor for us, is substitute, which is a direct equivalent of replace. We should avoid this. The other options should not challenge us in this question. Question 8 is a sentence insertion question. When we read the sentence to be inserted in the paragraph, we see that it starts with this growing cooperation. Well, so before this sentence, we need to see some kind of cooperation or an indication of cooperation between tech experts and city planners. The first potential sentence that gives this impression is the sentence before location B. So this one. It mentions integration of vertical farms into urban planning. When we look at the sentence after location C, we see that there's an example of buildings involving vertical farms. As a result, we can say that option C is the best location to insert the sentence in the question. It comes right after potential cooperation and right before a specific example about this. Well, question number 9 is an inference question. These questions are different than fact questions because we are not looking for something that is already there. We are looking for something implied. When we read the question, we see that it is about the future of vertical farming. the paragraph already starts with the expression looking ahead. When we read the first 3 sentences in the paragraph, we can see that the future of vertical farming is related to economic and technological developments. So there's potential, but this potential relies on economic and technological changes in the world. That's why the best option here will be option B. The other options are all incorrect, and specifically, they are too severe and strict. This paragraph focuses on possibilities, not definitive statements. But if you take a look at option A, C, and D, you will see that they are mostly highly and excessively definitive statements. So we should avoid them. Let's continue with question number 10. Question 10 is a summary question. This question type has more value than the other questions. It covers the whole passage. Usually we can answer this question by focusing on the first sentence and the last sentence of every paragraph, which we read at the beginning of the reading test, even before starting to take a look at the questions. Well, incorrect options are sometimes incorrect pieces of information, and sometimes they are correct based on the paragraph, but they only involve minor, limited pieces of information from the paragraph. Options A, C, and D are all correct and comprehensive pieces of information from the paragraph. If we divide this passage into 4 parts, we can say that it starts with a general introduction related to vertical farming, then continues with how vertical farming works, then moves on to the challenges of vertical farming, and then finally finishes with the future potential of this method. Options B, E, and F are all incorrect based on the passage. Well, overall, this is how we approach the various question types found in academic proficiency tests in their reading sections, of course, such as the TOEFL, IBT. In the following videos, if I can find enough time, of course, I will try to delve deeper into each question type when I will try to make more explanations and try to share more strategies related to answering these specific question types. Thank you for listening and good luck in your studies.